Imagine this. You're standing at the edge of a deep forest. The wind soft against your skin, stars sparkling overhead like forgotten memories. Somewhere far beneath your feet, countless layers of earth press downward, each one a silent archive of time, millions of years deep, tightly packed, and mostly unexplored. It's quiet now, nothing stirs. But if you could listen closely, you might hear them, the echoes. The faint, lingering whispers of something ancient, not animal, not geological, but human, or at least something like us. What if we've gotten it all wrong? Not just a little wrong, but everything. What if the history we're so familiar with, from Mesopotamia to microchips, from spears to spaceflight, is only the latest performance of a stage that's been reset many times before? What if we are not the first, not the peak or the beginning, but simply the latest attempt? Night, you're not here to rush, so allow your thoughts to drift gently as we explore one of the most thought-provoking ideas ever whispered in fringe philosophy, ancient mythology and forbidden archaeology. The idea that we may be a reset, a revival of a civilization so old, so advanced and so utterly wiped clean. That no one remembers it. Not in stone carvings, not in books, not even in myth, at least not consciously. But what if clues still linger, hiding in the unlikeliest of places? Our species, Homo sapiens, has existed for about 300,000 years. That's a lot of time. But when you look at our story, industrial civilization as we know it began only about 200 years ago. Even the earliest known cities arise maybe 6,000 years ago. What were we doing for the other 294,000 years? Just surviving, hunting, waiting. Pause for a moment. Think of that gap. All that time, like a blank chapter, pages missing from a book you thought you knew by heart. That's not a quiet gap. Silence screaming to be heard. In just the last century, we've gone from horses to Mars rovers. If we did that in 100 years, what could a civilization have done in 10,000 or 50,000? What about 100,000 years or more? Could they have risen, built, connected, only to be crushed and buried by forces we still don't fully understand? And here's the real question. Would we even know about them if they had? That's the mystery we'll explore together, slowly and calmly. Or why did no one tell me this kind of mystery? A theory rich with science, myth, imagination, and quiet wonder. You don't need to believe it. You just need to be open to drift into it. There once may have been civilizations that flourished long before recorded time, more advanced than our own. Their cities now long gone, their names forgotten, their wonders lost beneath oceans, deserts, or crushed beneath glaciers. But what if the Earth didn't simply forget them? What if it reset? Let's go back, not to the pyramids, not to the Ice Age. Further, as far back as your mind can drift, into a limitless past made not of darkness, but of discovery. It begins far beneath the surface, where light can't touch and time moves differently, in layers, in pressure, in silence. The deeper you go, the older the Earth becomes, and yet the stories disappear. That's the thing about deep time. It doesn't preserve, it erases. We often imagine ancient civilizations as buried treasures, ruins waiting just a few meters below our feet, waiting to be uncovered. Archaeologists with brushes and shovels carefully dust away sand to reveal pottery, stones, tools. And yes, sometimes they do find those things. But those are from recent history, 5,000 years ago, maybe 10, rarely much more. But what if there was something older, much older? Imagine a civilization that rose 50,000 years ago. A people who mastered engineering, mathematics, perhaps even energy and transportation in ways we can't imagine. Over the course of tens of thousands of years, they grew, and then, all at once, they vanished. The problem is this: landscapes move. Mountains rise and fall. Oceans drain and return. The continents aren't fixed. They drift like thoughts across the surface of the world. Wind, water, ice, and fire reshape everything. Cities crumble to dust. Then that dust is swallowed by forests, washed away by floods, pressed into rock, buried beneath thousands of years of sediment and silence. If you dropped your smartphone in a jungle and no one found it for 10,000 years, what would be left? Not much. Maybe a few flecks of aluminum, perhaps the ghost of a circuit, unrecognizable. Nature doesn't keep records for long. It recycles everything. Even the Earth's crust, which we imagine as firm and final, is constantly shifting, renewing. The ocean floor is renewed every 200 million years or so. That might sound like a long time, but Earth has existed for over 4.5 billion years. In its geologic terms, maintaining surface-level evidence of a past civilization beyond a few 100,000 years is nearly impossible. All that would need to happen is time. It's not a fantasy, we've seen it recently. In just a few centuries, cities like Pompeii have disappeared under volcanic ash. Entire towns have vanished beneath desert sands, rising waters, or thick jungles. All those are places we once knew. What about the ones we never knew to begin with? We like to believe the past is mapped and catalogued, tucked neatly into timelines and dates. But deep beneath our most confident histories, strange anomalies start to appear. Places that don't fit, dates that don't match, materials that shouldn't exist for thousands of years. They're often dismissed or ignored or explained away. After all, if our science can't account for them, they're easier to forget. But what if they're not accidents? What if they are the remnants of people who came before, not as stories in myth, but as beings not so different from us? There are places on Earth where ruins lie beneath other ruins, creating layers like pages in a long-lost book. In Turkey, beneath Göbekli Tepe, already one of the oldest known temple complexes, there are hints of even earlier constructions. In India, off the coast of Dwarka, structures lie submerged, their symmetry and design impossible to attribute to natural rock formations. In Japan, the Yonaguni Monument challenges everything scientists thought they knew about prehistoric construction. But even those, if genuine, are recent compared to the vast, empty timeline behind them. So the question remains, where are the traces of the true ancients? The answer might be everywhere and nowhere. Not because we haven't looked, but because the Earth is a master at burying her past. She does not keep museums. She makes forests from palaces, dust from monuments. Entire civilizations could have come and gone, and left behind only a few out-of-place clues too strange to be taken seriously. And yet, perhaps those clues are calling to us still. Not loudly, not boldly, but softly, beneath oceans, deserts, jungles, and glaciers, in seams of forgotten stone, in maps older than our understanding, in myths that speak of great floods, of towers that reached the sky, and stars that birthed gods and machines. Perhaps we were never meant to find them. Or perhaps they left us just enough to ask the question, what happened before us? And more haunting still, how would we know if it all vanished again? It can happen in an instant, or slowly, over centuries. But when it does, it changes everything. Civilizations don't always fall because of war, weakness, or politics. Sometimes the Earth itself decides it's time to start over. We often forget how fragile our modern world really is. Cities feel permanent. Skyscrapers look unshakable. But from the viewpoint of deep time, they are as temporary as footprints in sand. Reset. It's a word we normally associate with technology, with buttons and systems and machines that go still, and then come alive again. But nature has its own reset buttons, deadly, powerful, and absolute. Just ask the dinosaurs. In Earth's long and complex history, there have been at least 5 major extinction events. They didn't just shuffle life around. They wiped the slate nearly clean. Over 99% of all species that have ever lived are now extinct. Most of that happened slowly. But sometimes the change comes fast, and the planet doesn't ask questions. Consider the Toba catastrophe. Just one of the most powerful volcanic eruptions in the last 2 million years. It happened around 74,000 years ago in what is now Indonesia. The explosion was so massive, it may have triggered a volcanic winter, drastically reducing global temperatures. Ash poured into the sky, blocking out sunlight for months. Crops failed. Populations collapsed. It's believed that the human population plummeted. Some estimates say only a few thousand individuals survived. From a thriving species to the brink of extinction, in the geologic equivalent of a heartbeat. And that was just one event. There are also stories of great floods, real ones, massive ones, that drowned landscapes and erased entire regions. During the last ice age, sea levels were over 400 feet lower than today. Vast coastlines were exposed, teeming with life. People likely lived there, built there, thrived there, and when the ice melted, it didn't simply rise like a bathtub gently filling. It surged, ice dams broke, glacial lakes exploded, walls of water taller than buildings swept across continents. Is it possible that civilizations, ones we've never heard of, never imagined, were born along those ancient coasts? and died beneath rising seas. We've barely explored the ocean floor. The great continents of prehistory now lie underwater, concealed by silt and time. If an ancient society existed there, even one as advanced as modern humans, where would the evidence be? Gone, or buried, or scattered? And then there are signs of even stranger resets. Some researchers believe a comet or a series of broken comet fragments struck Earth around 12,800 years ago, bringing sudden climate change, wildfires, and widespread destruction, a theory known as the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis. The timing is interesting. That period saw the extinction of many large animals and a massive drop in global temperatures. It also marks an unusual pause in human development, an interruption. Was something just beginning, before it was suddenly undone? The idea of a reset isn't new. Even in ancient stories, it appears again and again. Myths tell of golden ages destroyed by divine anger or cosmic disaster, of great floods sent to wash away a corrupted world, of towers built too high and punished so they could never rise again. People across millennia have held a strange intuition that we've been here before, that things have come and gone, that time is not a straight line, but a spiral. And here we are, surrounded by our technology, proud of our knowledge, confident in our progress. Yet always under the quiet shadow of the planet we live on, a planet with the power and the history to start over without warning. What would it take to erase everything we've built? Not a nuclear war, not global warming, nothing man-made. Just nature doing what it has always done. One eruption, one asteroid, one sudden shift in global climate. Don't think of it as destruction, think of it as forgetting. As great silence falling across the earth, letting time begin its quiet work. Wind, rain, dust, frost. 1,000 years pass, then 5,000, then 10. Skyscrapers fall, bridges crack. Metal rusts, books decay, data vanishes. Satellites slip from orbit and fall into the sea. By the time a new species walks the earth, curious and bent on discovery, there's nothing left to tell them we were here. No signs, no voice, just scattered signals buried so deep they may never reach the light. Just as it may have been before, sometimes history leaves behind something it shouldn't. A fragment, a detail, a whisper in stone or metal that doesn't quite belong. Something unearthed that challenges the story we've carefully built, quietly, stubbornly, and often without question. These are the fragments that don't fit the puzzle, because maybe they came from an entirely different puzzle altogether. Imagine walking through a museum, seeing the ancient tools of early humans, stone knives, grinding stones, clay pots. Then, behind the glass, something stops you cold. It's small, metallic, delicate, but it looks suspiciously modern. A gear, a tube, a magnet. You ask the curator what it is. They say, "We don't talk about that one." They may call it an out-of-place artifact, or as some researchers like to say, an OP art. To the mainstream, these are usually dismissed, ignored, or waved away with explanations of coincidence or misidentification. But what if just one of them is real? Take, for instance, the Baghdad battery. Discovered in Iraq during the 1930s, this clay jar, dated to over 2,000 years ago, contains copper and iron components that strongly resemble a simple galvanic cell. A battery. Could ancient people have understood electricity? Was it for electroplating? Or was it for something else entirely that we no longer understand? Most archaeologists brush it off, a coincidence, or perhaps used for ceremonial purposes. But something about it lingers in the mind. Not because it proves anything conclusively, but because it sits so strangely outside the story we've been told. Then there's the Antikythera mechanism. Pulled from an ancient Greek shipwreck over a century ago, it looks like a rustic curiosity until it's studied more closely. Inside a precision gear so intricate, it took scientists decades to understand it. It's an astronomical calculator built with complexity that wouldn't be seen again for 1,000 years. How did it come to exist in a time when it supposedly shouldn't? If they made this, what else could they have made? Around the world, strange maps have turned up that depict the Earth not as it is now, but as it may have looked with different coastlines, some showing Antarctica long before it was thought to have been discovered, and more importantly, without its current ice cap. How would someone know what Antarctica looked like under miles of ice, thousands of years before planes or satellites existed? That's where the Piri Reis map comes in. Drawn in 1513 by a Turkish admiral, it's believed to be a compilation of much older sources, possibly even ancient ones. The map has been the subject of debates for decades. Some say it implies knowledge passed down from a forgotten people, perhaps even a people from a time before the last reset. Could there have been ancient civilizations capable of seafaring, of charting stars, of navigating the globe long before history allows for such things? Then there's the matter of impressions in stone, footprints, wheel-like indentations, even what some believe are tool marks, found in layers of rock that are supposed to be millions of years old. Most scientists reject them as either misidentified natural features or hoaxes, and yet others persist. These are the traces that don't tempt fame or fortune. They invite questions. Not far from these artifacts are stories, strange ones, spoken in the oldest traditions of human culture. In India, ancient texts known as the Vedas describe flying machines called vimanas. These were not chariots of myth. They had structure, descriptions, and even flight manuals detailing motion, propulsion, and weaponry, far too technical to be metaphor. Were they just symbolic tales or memories? In the Mahabharata, an epic poem thousands of years old, there is a passage that stops many modern readers in their tracks. It describes what sounds eerily like a battle involving a weapon so powerful it burned entire cities to ash, melted stone, and caused the hair and nails of survivors to fall out, something eerily reminiscent of nuclear radiation. Of course, it could be poetic imagery. But what if it's not? What if it's history wearing the mask of myth? Every culture has stories like these, tales of a time when the sky was filled with fire, when a gods came down offering knowledge, when weapons lit up the heavens, and when a great flood washed it all away, sealing ancient mistakes beneath water and time. Our history is carefully edited. What doesn't fit is placed softly to the side, but if you follow those out-of-place pieces, they seem to point tenderly, quietly, towards something forgotten. Not erased entirely, but left behind in small, scattered glimmers. Maybe that's what the survivors intended, if such survivors existed at all. Not to leave buildings, but gentle clues. Hints for the next rise, should one come. Just enough to recognize that we are not the first, and maybe not the last. The stars don't rush. They follow invisible paths across the sky, orbiting within systems older than our imagination. And perhaps, like the stars, intelligence follows a path too, an inevitable pattern, a rhythm built into the very fabric of time. What if civilization isn't a one-time miracle, but a cycle? It's tempting to think that intelligence is rare, a fluke of nature like a lightning strike sculpting glass in the sand. We see ourselves as the exception. The only species to build machines, write books, launch satellites. But what if that's only because we're the only ones left? What if intelligence is not exclusive, but simply temporary? Take a step back. Imagine humanity not as the pinnacle, but as part of a repeating pattern. Civilizations rising, growing, building, reaching, then falling, scattered, erased, forgotten. Perhaps begun again with different minds, different hands, in different forms. Each cycle climbing for a time before vanishing into the quiet. And if that's true, then the question becomes, are we the first on this path, or simply the next? Think of the progress we've made in just a few hundred years, from horses to highways, from candles to cloud servers. Look at how fast it's happened. In less than a human lifespan, we've gone from sending letters by messenger to sending live video across oceans. That kind of exponential growth feels exciting, but also suspicious. Is it normal? Could it have happened before? Could it happen again? Perhaps it always does. In nature, we see patterns everywhere. Trees grow from seed to blossom, then fall back to earth to feed the next. Stars are born, shine, then collapse to form new ones. Whole forests burn, only for new life to emerge from ash. Nature abhors waste, and if intelligence emerges as part of that cycle, then maybe civilizational life is also recyclable. Some scientists call this the Silurian Hypothesis, the idea that if an intelligent species had lived millions of years ago, long before humans, we'd likely find no trace of it. Their cities would be gone, their technology rotted away, their knowledge turned to dust. Only certain types of chemical signatures, like plastic residues or sudden carbon spikes, might remain, and even those could mimic natural events. In other words, they could have been here. We simply wouldn't know. Sound familiar? It should. Because we don't need to look to the ancient past to understand how fragile high technology really is. Just look at now. What happens if we lose the electrical grid? the internet, what's left of our civilization if we lose the tools required to read it? Even a basic printed book is now increasingly rare. We store everything on devices that vanish without power, without energy, without upkeep. If we fell today, if every city went dark, what story would remain? In 1,000 years, stone ruins. In 10,000, barely fragments. In 50,000. Nothing at all. Perhaps then every intelligent species is part of an invisible loop. Not because they fail, but because success comes with great risk. Energy, technology, and power may be the key to advancement, but also the seed of collapse. We also see it in myth. Cultures from different corners of the earth, who, according to mainstream history, had no contact with one another, describe golden ages, followed by floods, wars, fires from the sky. Some fictional, perhaps. But is it only storytelling, or is it cultural memory dimly preserved through time? Even we already understand cycles of rise and fall. The Romans believed they would last forever. The Mayans built great pyramids and cities. Where are they now? The Indus Valley Civilization, the ancient Egyptians, the Olmecs, all rose with brilliance and fell into quiet. With each rise, languages vanish. With each fall, libraries burn, and with enough time, stories collapse into legend, and legends fade into silence. Now, standing at the very peak of our digital age, we imagine ourselves as permanent. But every great civilization before us believed the same, and every one of them fell. Maybe that's not failure. Maybe that's just the pattern. Civilizations aren't single flames. They're sparks, ideas that ignite for a while, then vanish, leaving only the slight warmth of their memory. Maybe life can't escape this cycle, or maybe it's not meant to. But if so, then the cycle could begin again, quietly, even now, in some other forgotten corner of time. Close your eyes and imagine a voice, not a voice you hear with ears, but one that stirs somewhere deeper in your chest, your breath, your bones. It doesn't speak in sentences. It speaks in symbols, in floods, fires, and fallen stars, in snakes that circle the earth, and birds that carry the sun. These are the voices of myth, and if you listen carefully, they might be more than stories. They might be memories. All over the world, from the frozen tundra to the steaming jungles, from desert temples to mountain shrines, ancient cultures speak of a time before this one. A time when gods walked the earth, when knowledge was given, not earned, when great wars scorched the sky, when the world was different, almost shattered by events too powerful to forget, but too distant to truly remember. If we weren't the first civilization, maybe those myths are the last echoes of the ones that came before. Across continents, the same story repeats. In Mesopotamia, there's the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of humanity's oldest written texts. Inside is the tale of Utnapishtim, a man warned by a god of a coming flood. A vast divine storm was to cleanse the earth. Utnapishtim builds a boat, places every kind of animal upon it, and survives as the world is washed away. Thousands of miles away, in ancient India, the same tale arises. Manu, a wise man, is warned by a divine fish of a coming flood. He builds a great ship, ties it to the fish, saves humanity. In Greece, Deucalion survives a flood sent by Zeus to punish civilization. In the Americas, Aztec legends describe the world ending and beginning again through cycles of destruction. In Australia, Aboriginal Dreamtime stories speak of ancestral spirits reshaping a flooded and broken world. The Norse talk about Ragnarök, an end followed by frost and silence, then a rebirth in green fields. Civilizations separated by oceans, by language, by time, yet their myths seem to share a haunted center. Flood. Fire. Fall. Reset. What if the stories weren't created from imagination, but inherited? What if they're ancient memories passed down not for entertainment but for survival, fractured and reshaped like pottery rebuilt by many hands? And it's not just floods. The myths also speak of powerful beings, not necessarily deities in the religious sense, but figures who arrive from the sky, the stars, the sea. Beings who teach writing, agriculture, metalwork, science. In Sumer, it was Enki. In Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent bringer of knowledge. In Africa, the Namo of the Dogon tribe, fish-like entities descended from the heavens to gift wisdom. In Egypt, Thoth, the god of writing and sacred knowledge, different names, same role, messengers, teachers, bringers of civilization, and then they vanish. Did ancient cultures imagine these beings or remember them? Were they gods, or were they something more complex, survivors of the last great fall, remnants of a prior world, holding on to fragments of what came before? Even the concept of time seems to warp inside these old stories. The Hindu yugas describe massive spans of time, millions of years with cycles of ascending and descending knowledge. The Mayan calendar doesn't measure just years. It measures with clear beginnings and ends. If the ancient peoples truly imagined it all, it's strange how global their imagination was. Without cell phones, satellites, or the sharing of ideas across oceans, how did nearly every culture independently invent the same ideas about endings, beginnings, floods, and sky teachers? Maybe they didn't invent them at all. Maybe they inherited them, and perhaps that's how a prior civilization chose to leave its mark, not in buildings or machines, but in stories, symbols encoded in dreams, timelines hidden in tradition, lessons preserved in the only way that truly survives, myth. Because myth is viral, it doesn't need a server, a power source, even a book. It lives in breath, in mothers telling children, in chants, in dance, in drawings on stone. It survives when everything else fades. So maybe all these stories, from the Sumerian flood to the flying vimanas of ancient India, are connected through more than metaphor. Maybe they're warnings, or memories, or blueprints. Maybe they're what's left when the machines collapse and the world forgets. And if they are, what are they trying to tell us? Maybe we're not standing at the edge of the future. Maybe we're standing on the grave of one. Time is a strange kind of river. On the surface, it looks clear, smooth, flowing steadily from past to present. But if you dive beneath it, deep beneath, you find stillness, silence, and entire chapters lost in the dark. We talk about prehistory like it's a thin slice of time, as if the human story begins with Sumer, or maybe Egypt. As if civilization, language, and technology were all born in the same blur of stone temples and early farming. But that's just the part we remember. The truth is almost the opposite. Homo sapiens have existed for at least 300,000 years. For 95% of that time, we were supposedly nomads, viving. Then, 6,000 years ago, we magically invented writing, farming, astronomy, and complex architecture. Almost once, all at once. Does that seem likely? Our brains haven't changed in tens of thousands of years. The same intelligence, the same ability to imagine, to organize, to build. If you took a person from 100,000 years ago and raised them today, they'd be indistinguishable, capable of using smartphones, solving equations, playing instruments. So why did we wait hundreds of thousands of years to plant a seed, map the stars, or stack stone into pyramids? Or did we? Maybe the time before time wasn't empty. Maybe it simply got deleted. Because the further back you go, the quieter the record becomes. Once you hit around 12,000 years ago, just before the end of the last ice age, the lights start going out. Stone tools appear, then vanish. Art pops up in caves with remarkable detail, then disappears for thousands of years. In many places, you find signs of intelligent beings doing something with purpose, but no one knows what that purpose was. The trail grows colder the deeper you look. Why? Because time, especially deep time, is the great eraser. It doesn't just bury, it transforms. Wood rots, skin decays, iron rusts, data vanishes, only stone stays. So if someone built with anything besides stone, anything like metal, circuitry, glass, we may never find it. Not because it wasn't there, but because it wasn't built to last 10,000 years. There may be signs of them, but by now, they look like natural anomalies, strange outcrops, or mineral deposits. Maybe we found parts already, mislabeled them, or placed them in drawers that gather dust. And yet pieces float to the surface. The great temple complex of Göbekli Tepe in modern-day Turkey was buried under earth for over 10,000 years, preserved accidentally. When it was uncovered, archaeologists found massive stone pillars carved with animals, symbols, and geometry. Then geometry. It shattered the timeline. This was not supposed to exist. It shouldn't have been possible, according to our view of human development. Yet there it was. And if there's one, you have to ask, how many more are still hidden? How many ruins lie beneath dense jungle, submerged under melted coastlines, or pushed under new layers of civilization? After all, most cities today are built over older ones. It's not uncommon for workers digging new foundations to find walls, floors, or tools from an older version of the same place. Cities upon cities, stories upon stories. This makes the absence of evidence far less mysterious. Our tools are weak against time. Our understanding of before is based on a few rare finds, a handful of preserved graves and pottery fragments. We extrapolate whole periods from broken shards and dusty bones. But what if our lens is too narrow? What if the truth is buried deeper than we've ever thought to look? Ask yourself this. If our modern world were to end suddenly, right now, how long would our structures last? In 50 years, cities would already be crumbling. In 500, nature would reclaim most of what we've built. In 5,000, only a few massive monuments might remain. After 12,000 years, possibly nothing. And so, within that silent stretch before recorded history, anything could have happened. Civilizations could have come and gone. Built, reached, conquered, collapsed. The earth could have swallowed them whole. And we would never know unless we knew exactly where and how to look. The time before time is not empty. It may be the most crowded period of all, full of hidden stories, unmarked graves, and cities erased by rain, roots, and fire. Maybe we haven't found them yet, not because they weren't there, but because they weren't preserved in the ways we expected. Or maybe, just maybe, we were meant to find them only once we were ready to understand what they were. You carry something ancient inside you. We all do. Not a memory, not a feeling, but something deeper. It's in your blood, your bones, your very code. A story written not in words, but in molecules. In sequences, in spirals of DNA stretching back farther than any book, older than any ruin, more enduring than any monument ever built. We like to think of evolution as a slow staircase, simple to complex, animal to human, primitive to advanced. And for the most part, that's what the record seems to show. But then something strange happens. Something accelerates. The human brain grows to nearly 3 times its previous size in what scientists sometimes call the brain bag. The larynx shifts downward, giving us the ability to speak with nuance and control. Art appears. Culture begins. Creativity explodes across the species with cave paintings, music, burial rituals, and tools beyond basic survival. But why? Why then? Why so suddenly? Why us? Some say it was just a perfect storm. Climate shifts, lightning strike mutations, environmental pressures that somehow unlocked extraordinary potential. Others look at the same leap and ask a very different question. Did someone help? That's a controversial idea. One that sits at the edge of mainstream science and peer-reviewed skepticism. Yet still it lingers, even grows, as more and more people quietly wonder. Could human beings, modern human consciousness, language, even civilization, have been guided into existence? Think about the way ancient myths frame our origin. In nearly every early culture, humans weren't just born, they were crafted, shaped by others, taught, created. In Sumeria, the Anunnaki are said to have molded mankind from clay and divine essence, not just to exist, but to serve. In Egypt, it was Thoth and Isis, giving form to humans under divine instruction. The Bible tells of Adam shaped from dust, given life by divine breath. Similar stories exist in the Andes, the Pacific Islands, Africa, and Asia. Different names, different gods, same idea. Human beings were not random. They were engineered. Now, what if we explored that not through lenses of religion or belief, but purely through the language of science? Let's talk DNA, your personal time capsule. Genes are information. They're programmable. We already manipulate them with precision in modern labs. We edit crops, alter animals, eliminate diseases, even aim to correct aging. So if we can do it now, who's to say it couldn't have been done before? Maybe not by gods, but by people, or beings, advanced, capable, and ancient, perhaps so old, their presence is now only remembered as myth. Some researchers even suggest that parts of our genome act almost like inserted code. That certain sequences show patterns of artificial design. These aren't universally accepted theories, but they exist. And they raise a chilling, powerful question. If someone altered us, who were they? And where did they go? Did they live here first? Were they survivors of the last great reset? Retreating into legend as their once magnificent culture collapsed? Did they watch the earth heal, then subtly guide the next rise, gifting fragments of language, ritual, technology, and rule? Or were they something else entirely? There's a concept known as panspermia, the idea that life, especially intelligent life, didn't start on Earth. It arrived. Maybe gently, through microbial DNA on comets, or maybe more directly, via ships, probes, or visitors whose motives are long forgotten. If that sounds far-fetched, consider how little we truly understand about our own origins. The oldest complete fossil of Homo sapiens was only discovered recently. Entire chapters of our development remain blank, filled with assumptions, guesses, and lines drawn loosely between scattered bones. Meanwhile, we still can't fully explain the origin of consciousness. Where did self-awareness come from? How did electrical impulses in brain matter evolve into love, sorrow, hope, and fear? Oh boy, of all species, did humans leap ahead so far, so fast, while others remained relatively unchanged? Maybe we were supposed to, or maybe someone made sure we would. If that's true, if our genetic code holds a signature not from Earth, but from a forgotten civilization or faraway star, then everything changes. We're not just a young species crawling out of the dark. We're the legacy of something ancient, a continuation, an echo. And if so, what does that mean for our future? Are we meant to rise again, fulfill a long-forgotten project, or reach a destiny set in motion before our planet even formed? Or are we standing at the edge of another reset, destined to vanish just as those before us did, our knowledge crumbling, our creations erased, and our story reduced to myth, for the next version to discover? A new mind may look back one day and study our ruins. They may program language again, find meaning in our remnants, decode fragments of who we once were. Maybe they'll look into their own code and find a little piece of us, just like we might still carry a piece of them. A slow unraveling, a stretch of overconfidence, signs ignored, resources overdrawn, voices silenced, and then silence. Now consider this. We are the first civilization with a global reach, the first to digitize our world, the first to mine not only earth and metal, but data and thought itself. Oh, our cities shine at night as proof of our mastery. But those same lights can't stop a solar flare from wiping our satellites. Our endless connectivity is also our greatest vulnerability. We are one fragile grid away from darkness. And yet, the world around us feels ancient in its reactions. Storms grow stronger, more frequent. Ice melts, waters rise, fields dry. Tectonic tensions mount from Alaska to the Andes to the Himalayan plate. Mother Earth is shifting. We used to see nature as something to work with. Now we try to dominate it, but the planet doesn't forget. And when it resets, it doesn't make exceptions. There is a hum beneath the surface of history. Ancient civilizations making the same climb, finding the same tools, unlocking the same powers, and walking into the same storm. Are we about to repeat their footsteps? Maybe we already are. But here is the strange comfort. If this is a cycle, then we are not entirely alone, not in time. We are part of a broader story, a cosmic rhythm built into the rise and fall of intelligent life. Perhaps the bitter truth isn't that we are the first at risk, but merely the latest. And just as we wonder about those who fell before us, one day someone might wonder about us. Will they find our cities? Will they decode our machines? Or will all our works vanish into the dust, leaving only the stories, the myths, the uncertain whispers of a people who once thought they ruled the world? Maybe the question isn't how long we'll last. Maybe it's what we'll leave behind. A lesson, a warning, a spark, or nothing at all. Or nothing at all. The stars will still shine long after we're gone. The planets will glide through their silent orbits. The oceans will continue to breathe in tides. Trees will rise and fall without names, and birds will sing songs no human ever hears. Whether we flourish or fade, the cosmos will continue its quiet dance, just as it did before us, and just as it will after. And maybe that's the most humbling truth of all. Because if we are a reset, if we are not the first but only the latest wave in a great sea of civilizations, then everything we build, everything we know, is both miraculous and temporary. But that idea isn't meant to inspire. Think about it. Perhaps others stood where we stand now, looking up at the stars, asking the same questions, fearing the same decline, dreaming the same hopes. They may have made mistakes. They may have flown, fought, explored, and created wonders we can no longer imagine. Maybe they vanished not in ignorance, but in awe, knowing their time had come, and leaving fragments behind for us to decode. Maybe we are those fragments. Maybe we are made not just of stardust, but of memory. The circuits of forgotten worlds still hum in our imagination. The stories they encoded survive in our myths. Their warnings echo in our instincts. Their dreams survive in our curiosity. We don't build pyramids as they did, but we build space stations. We build simulations. We ask where we came from, not because we're lost, but because something in us remembers. And now, here we are, at the edge of another possibility. We can go further than they did. We have the tools, not just technology, but awareness, consciousness, connection. We know now what the Earth can do. We understand how fragile civilizations are. We hold in our hands the power not only to reset ourselves, but to prevent another fall. This, maybe, is the gift of being a reset. Not a failure, not a mistake, but a second chance. So what will we do with it? What's there? Will we bury ourselves under towers of distraction and forget our place in the story? Or will we look back, far back, and carry the forgotten lessons forward? Because even if the past remains unknowable, its message is clear. Time does not remember what you built. It remembers what you meant. And if some distant future mind, thousands of years from now, finds only dust where we once stood, let them find something more. Let them find kindness in our ruins, curiosity in our remnants, a spark in our silence. Because maybe that's what the first civilizations meant to leave behind. Not ruins, but hope. And now, as your eyes grow heavy and your breath begins to slow, drift gently into that thought, into a deep and endless ocean of time, a place where the past and future touch, and where you've always been more than just today. You are the echo and the voice, the memory and the dream, the question and the second chance. What if intelligence is not rare, not a single flicker in the dark, but a flame that returns again and again, each time in a new form, under a new sky, born of the same forces that built us? Because when you look at human history not as a straight line, but as a loop, a cycle, you start to see the familiar shape of something much deeper, a rhythm, a pulse, a pattern playing out over thousands, maybe millions of years. Nature repeats itself, sometimes in spirals, sometimes in circles. Day becomes night, becomes day again. Ice ages come and go. Forests burn to ash and bloom anew. The heartbeat of the earth is not forward. It is cyclical. And if life itself follows this rhythm, perhaps civilization does too. We often imagine ourselves as unique, one of a kind, irreplaceable, the sole intelligent species ever to rise on this planet. But what if that's only how we appear right now? In this chapter of history, imagine for a moment that we are not the first. That intelligence, conscious thought, language, invention, culture, has evolved before, long ago. Then, for reasons we may never fully understand, it vanished. Reclaimed by the earth, erased by time, lost beneath firestorms, ice, or oceans, forgotten by history, waiting only in silence. Now imagine it happened more than once. We already know how much can change in a short period. In just 500 years, we've gone from sailing ships to space stations, from using candles to controlling artificial intelligence, from planting seeds by hand to editing genes. Our modern world, built on steel, circuitry, and invisible code, emerged in only a couple of centuries. That's less than a blink on the timeline of Earth. So if a civilization had tens of thousands of years to evolve, how high could it climb? What if another species, not unlike us, walked the Earth 100,000 years ago, or 500,000? What if they discovered fire, language, technology far more advanced than stone tools? What would remain of their achievements now? Probably nothing, because time doesn't preserve. It cleans, it deletes. It burns, floods, erodes, and buries. Nothing artificial lasts without constant renewal. Even our modern cities would vanish within centuries without maintenance. Roads would crack, buildings would crumble, nature would return, data would disappear. After 10,000 years, you might not even know we were here, and in that silence a new mind could emerge. Not overnight, but gradually, as it always has. Adaptation, curiosity, cognition, a sense of self. Then tools, language, belief, a spark of wonder at the stars. And then, step by step, civilization rises again. Different faces, same pattern. Many have wondered if this has actually happened. In science, there's even a term for it. The Silurian Hypothesis, born not in science fiction, but as a serious thought experiment. The idea asks, if an advanced civilization had existed on Earth millions of years ago, would we even know it? The answer, by the way, is likely no. Earth is dynamic. It reshapes itself constantly. Oceans open and close. Continents drift. Volcanoes explode. can't splatter skies. And over millions of years, even the greatest structures would dissolve into unrecognizability. There might be subtle traces, geologic anomalies, strange compounds in the fossil record, but they'd be almost impossible to interpret and indistinguishable from natural processes. Which means they could have been here, and we'd have no way to prove it. And perhaps one day the same will be said of us. But there's something deeper too. A question not just about physical remains, but about consciousness itself. Because intelligence doesn't always leave monuments. Sometimes it leaves art, music, belief. Sometimes it doesn't build empires. It watches, it learns, it harmonizes with its environment. Maybe an earlier civilization didn't seek to dominate nature, but to understand it. What if that was the route they chose? What if their technology wasn't concrete and steel, but living, breathing, biological? Tools made from plants, self-regulating systems, energy drawn from balance, not destruction, things that leave no mark when gone, wisdom that doesn't survive in metal, but in instinct. Could something like that have flourished, burned briefly, and vanished, leaving only myths that feel more like dreams than history? Again, maybe. And so we come to a softer truth. That intelligence may not be rare, but remembered intelligence is. The cycle, if it exists, may have turned many times. Civilizations may rise, fall, and rise again, each new one thinking it's the first, the only, the pinnacle, just as we do, until it too collapses, and nature begins her slow work of forgetting. But maybe, just maybe, something lingers. Maybe each cycle leaves behind not only ruins, but resonance, ideas, patterns, a subtle direction impressed into the deep psychology of the species, an invisible inheritance passed quietly from rise to reset to rise again. And here we are, caught once more in that spiral, watching the sky, building skyscrapers, asking the stars where we came from, and perhaps even now, beginning unconsciously to remember, not the facts, but the feeling of having been here before, the echo in our own minds, of a world long gone. It always begins with a story, told by firelight, whispered in caves, painted on walls, sung between generations before any word was ever written. Long before history became fact, there was memory, and memory became myth. At first glance, they sound like bedtime stories, tales of floods, fire, sky gods, and golden realms. They come from every corner of the earth, told by people separated by oceans, language, and time. But listen closely, and the patterns become impossible to ignore. What if these myths weren't just made up? What if they're fragments of something real? In ancient Mesopotamia, the earliest civilization we officially recognize, a story was carved into clay thousands of years ago, the Epic of Gilgamesh. In it, a man named Uchtam is warned by the gods of a coming flood. He builds a boat, brings animals aboard, and survives the destruction of the world. This isn't the only version. In India, there's Manu, who is warned by a divine fish of a great flood. He too constructs a vessel, preserving life. In the Bible, Noah's Ark. In Greece, Deucalion and Pyrrha. In China, the legend of Yu the Great, taming waters that drowned the earth. Among the Aztecs, it was Thalok's flood. The Australian Aboriginal stories speak of a drowning earth in the dream time. Across Polynesia, oral traditions pass down flood myths that closely mirror those from continents away. Different names, same story. Why? Floods do happen. Rivers rise, tsunamis destroy. But for the same narrative, down to the details of divine beings, boats, survival, and rebirth, to show up on every major continent. That's more than coincidence. It begins to feel less like myth and more like memory. But the floods are just the beginning. Across these ancient myths, cultures talk about great cycles of time. They speak of golden ages, eras of peace, wisdom, and godlike knowledge, followed by darkness, decline, and some cataclysm that wipes the world clean. In Hindu texts, this is known as the Yuga cycle, 4 vast ages of time, repeating endlessly. The first, Satya Yuga, is a time of truth and divine connection, a paradise. Then comes decline, Treta, Dvapara, and finally, Kali Yuga, the age of forgetting. The end of that age often brings a purge, a celestial reset. In Central American myth, the Maya told of 4 suns, 4 previous worlds, each of which ended in destruction. We are said to live in the 5th. The Norse spoke of Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, when fire and ice destroy the world. Yet after it, green fields are reborn. In Egyptian cosmology, History wasn't linear. It moved in recurring world ages. Each cycle began with order, descended into chaos, and was reborn after destruction. Even the pharaohs described their reigns as echoes of a first time, known as Zep-Tepi, a period long before recorded history, when gods and humans walk side by side. And then there are the gods themselves. Culture after culture recalls mysterious beings who arrived suddenly, bringing knowledge to early humans. Sumerians described the Anunnaki, star-traveling deities who came to Earth with the power of creation and design. The Dogon people of Mali, in Africa, speak of the Namo, amphibious beings from the Sirius star system, who gave them sacred teachings and astronomical knowledge modern telescopes only confirmed in the last century. In South and Central America, Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, is credited with teaching the people agriculture, laws, and architecture. He came from across the sea, pale-skinned, tall, and bearded, before disappearing with promises to return. His legend echoes that of Viracocha in the Andes, another teacher god who vanished over the horizon after helping humanity. In the East, Vima's flying chariots described in ancient Indian epics like the Mahabharata reflect stunning details of aerial warfare, propulsion, and machines the ancients called. Quite simply, are the gods' vehicles in the sky. Are all of these just metaphors, cultural storytelling? Or were they the best way early humans could describe profound experiences? What if these gods were not divine in the way we think, but simply survivors? The last remnants of a previous civilization, passing down remnants of knowledge before disappearing into legend. Or travelers returning to witness the rebirth of a world they once knew. Even their descriptions are often strangely consistent. Glowing skin, radiant clothing, flight, devices that shimmered or vibrated, the power to raise structures or part waters, like advanced technology, interpreted through the lens of awe. To a pre-industrial people, even something as simple as a light or a drone would seem supernatural, and yet, some part of the story always disappears, as if knowledge was passed, then lost, a spark caught, but not preserved. Civilizations rise in the myths, reach toward greatness, and then are swept away, always by water, fire, collapse, or sky. Then the cycle begins again. Each time, the world is reborn. Each time, a few survive. And each time stories are passed, distorted over hundreds of generations, but always holding the seed of something older. Something truer. Maybe that's the true purpose of myth. Not fantasy, but a flawed memory. Not fiction, but a fragile warning. A reset civilization, trying to tell the future what the past forgot. And maybe we're still listening. Of all the mysteries surrounding our existence, one question quietly lies beneath them all. What were we doing all that time? Modern humans. Homo sapiens have existed for at least 300,000 years, according to fossil and genetic evidence. That's nearly 50 times longer than the entire history of recorded civilization. We remember only 6,000 years of writing, farming, governments, cities, laws, and we call that history. The rest, nearly 294,000 years, lies in darkness. A long stretch of silence before the lights turned on. Why? Were we simply wandering, hunting, surviving, millions of minds like ours, doing nothing but gathering berries and making fires for hundreds of millennia? Or is that just what we assume because nothing else survived to tell the difference? Mainstream archaeology tells us that human civilization began around 10,000 to 12,000 years ago, shortly after the Ice Age ended. Farming began in the Fertile Crescent, and small tribes formed into settlements. Eventually, settlements became cities. Cities became states. Writing emerged, trade expanded, tools progressed. And here we are. This timeline is comforting, simple, clean. But if we are truly that old, capable of abstract thinking for so long, does it make sense that all complex behavior just randomly burst into life at the same time, on multiple continents, around the same window of prehistory? Or were there other sparks before this one? Let's look at what the Earth keeps, and more importantly, what it doesn't. Archaeology, for all its brilliance, depends on material survival. Most of what we use today, plastic, metal, electronics, won't survive even a few hundred years without protection. Organic materials vanish even faster. Wood, paper, fabrics, fibers, all of it gone long before the first shovel ever reaches the soil. So when we say there's no evidence of earlier civilizations, remember, there shouldn't be. Not if they lived far enough back. Not if their cities were swallowed by oceans. Not if forests regrew over them. Not if glaciers dragged over them, or if earthquake faults swallowed them whole. And yet, sometimes things do survive. Just enough to ask questions. Take Göbekli Tepe, arguably the world's oldest known temple. Discovered in modern-day Turkey, it dates back over 11,000 years, a time that, according to traditional history, should have been populated by simple hunter-gatherers. No cities, no temples, no advanced architecture, and yet this site contains enormous carved stone pillars placed in sophisticated circles aligned astronomically to star positions. Carvings depict animals, celestial events, and symbols that appear more symbolic than decorative, suggesting abstract thought, ritual, perhaps even cosmology. It was buried for reasons unknown and only recently uncovered. Even older signs of symbolic intelligence have appeared. Beads made from seashells drilled with tools, cave paintings showing shape, color, motion, bones carved with lunar cycles. Artifacts as old as 40,000 or even 100,000 years. We call them curiosities, rare insights into a shadowed past. But what if they're not rare? What if they're survivors of a world too old, too eroded, too changed for us to truly see? What if the record isn't empty by accident, but by nature? The deeper you go past 12,000 years, the quieter it becomes. Stone tools, scattered bones, but rarely entire sites. This isn't because those people weren't capable. It's because the Earth has had time to forget them. In places like the Amazon, radar and LiDAR scanning has begun to reveal astonishing possibilities. Massive buried geometrical patterns that suggest complex planning. Roads, canals, dwellings, not recent, but deeply covered. Hidden below centuries of rainforest, not erased, just at sea. And this opens the door to an unsettling idea. What if many of the oldest civilizations did not vanish? They were simply covered by forests, by sands, by sediment, by ice, swallowed by rising seas during the great melt at the end of the Ice Age. If you consider that modern coastlines during glacial maximum were more than 400 feet lower than they are today, then much of the most valuable livable land from those early times is now underwater, and underwater archaeology is still in its infancy. We've barely explored the ocean floor. It's possible, perhaps even likely, that immense ruins or clues rest beneath those waves. Already, structures like the sunken city of Dwarka, India, or the mysterious Yonaguni Monument off the coast of Japan challenge the historical timeline. Scientists debate their origins, but their alignment, shape, and placement keep the possibility alive. So again we ask, what were we doing for all that time? Maybe we tried. Maybe we failed. Maybe we rose and fell so long ago that even the bones of our memory have crumbled. No trace. No voice. Just scattered echoes in stone, myth and dream. Or maybe intelligence is not one straight road, but a spiral staircase, one rise after another, one high point followed by silence. And in that silence, a return to simplicity, until some flicker of memory begins again, a whisper at first, then a fire, a city, a sky full of questions, and the cycle begins once more.